Right.
Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did you want to have a moment of silence for the president? No,
I mean, we probably should.
I'm just kidding.
For the president, for the whole country. So Paul just asked if we're going to have a moment of silence. And we should.
It's fine. Just thought.
So much going on right now. The country needs all the good vibes that we can get. I would like to move to accept tonight's agenda for October 5th, 2020, if I may have a second. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Any
Yes.
opposed? So carried. We are going to begin tonight's work session with policy review. Did you actually meet today?
We did.
Okay, because I know Ann was unavailable today. So who would like to, did Ann zoom in?
She did not.
Okay. She was going to be out of town, but she actually came down with a bad head cold. So that threw her travel plans out, but she had
Working.
she had texted me.
You just need to mute your computer.
She had texted me earlier that she was going to try to zoom in if she was feeling up to it. So if she's not here, who would like to pick up policy review?
I can do it. Do you want me to do it? We reviewed our continual review of the 7,000s. So we reviewed largely the 7310 to 7360 was student conduct and discipline, loss or destruction of school property, suspension of students. We did have one change to suspension of students after the discussion of what suspension could look like. We added a section on restorative practices, and largely it says in every instance of student discipline that requires suspension, the use of restorative practices will be employed to support student development and growth. And then it talks about at the end of that, the appeal that can go to the Board of Education. And it talks about some conditions to which would supplement or supplant a suspension of a student, and talks about a variety of different things. And then it talks about restorative practices where applicable. So that was a change there. There were the two policies on student use of computer information systems, the acceptable use policy. Nick Hill reviewed today with me, and there were no changes. Searches, investigations into suspected student misconduct, that's all governed by education law and penal law. And so we just talked a little bit about the difference between reasonable suspicion versus probable cause, and how police officers can question or interrogate when they can and when they can't. Yes.
Anne is here and is raising her hand.
Okay. So would someone like to ask what she would like to say? Because I don't have it up.
Yeah, I don't have it up yet.
I think you're unmuted.
Okay, I just wanted to let you all know that I'm here.
Oh,
Thank you. Did she just sign in right now?
I think so.
So we talked a little bit about that, but there were no changes to that. Bus rules and regulations, largely governed by the Code of Conduct. There were no changes to policy 7340. Corporal punishment in emergency, no changes to that. Corporal punishment obviously is a very universal term for any time that there is physical interaction between staff and students in a disciplinary fashion. And there are times, although it's characterized under the term corporal punishment, it's not the old, if you think of the Board of Education, so to speak, the paddling or something like that. This is if there was an instance where a staff member had to physically restrain a student to protect oneself, protect others, protect the property, or restrain because of the overly disruptive student. So talk a little bit about that. There was no change in weapons in school. The Gun Free Schools Act changed. And then we just really had no change. We had talked a little about those policies that are up for second reads, the extraordinary circumstances. All of those three policies are basically in relation to the COVID crisis. So extraordinary circumstances, remote working and remote learning, and then the interpreter services depends. There were some policies that are on hold. Those are being reviewed and looked at by various staff members. Whether that's individual or team of folks that are looking at those. So we'll be gathering that information and getting into policy committee probably for the November policy meeting. No, definitely for the November policy meeting. And we can act on those. Those are from 7,000. Okay. And I believe that is it. Okay, did I do on
Please are reviewed for August and September. There really is not much to add. We've added some new vendors. We've been doing a lot more purchasing with Amazon this year because, quite frankly, that's the only place we can find COVID supplies right now. And we've done fairly well with prices there. Otherwise, there's really nothing unusual.
Yeah, I have them out to you. Please take a look at them. I have three that are included in the district goals and board goals. Largely for COVID-19 reopening goals. So goal one for myself is to effectively reopen most important schools in safe, healthy, and positive ways so as to ensure an effective learning experience for all students that is aligned to New York State learning standards for learning and New York State Department of Education, New York State Department of Guidance in schools. Then it talks about some of the action steps that employing largely aligned to the district action steps. The second one is strategic planning and implementation to ensure a focused and collaborative implementation of the 2020 to 2025 strategic plan so as to promote sustained instruction and development of the key goal areas of the plan, defining student success, creating innovative learning environments, and building a climate and culture that supports the change process necessary for full implementation of the plan. And then the action steps that are outlined in the district goals, which then will kind of trickle down to the administrators. And finally, my third goal, this is obviously, these are all draft. The 2020, 2022, 2021, 2022 budget development. I wanted to focus specifically on that because we know that the budget development is going to be difficult and significant this year. And it's going to be something that I really need to hone in on with Dr. Grupka and Dr. Lyon especially. So the COVID-19 pandemic has created unique budgetary issues and constraints that will serve to put significant pressure on the maintenance of key elements of our school programs and growth of the strategic plan. Use of our strategic plan to prioritize programming in order to grow our district in a responsible way. And then I have some ongoing dialogue and goal setting with the Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services that will create a greater understanding and communication between both offices. Continue review of the strategic plan to determine next steps and ongoing review of revenues and spending with the assistant superintendent to ensure responsiveness and adjustment to the evolving budgetary picture, which is currently not good right now. So I wanted to pull that out. I don't generally have the budget per se as a specific goal area of mine, but this year I think it's going to be significant. So I felt it was appropriate to pull it out and make it a specific goal. So please take a look at those. If you have any questions or comments, please get them to Jody. Jody and I will meet, obviously on our Thursday meetings leading up to the goal we'll finalize the goals and approve them at the end of this month.
Okay, does anyone have any questions right now?
I'd like to say that I think having goal 3 budget development is significant and important, and I'm glad to see it in there. That, I do think that will be an issue.
I do too.
Districts,
All districts.
and that you're willing to focus on that. I think that's important, and I'm happy to see it there.
Well, obviously we've built quite a program here, and our goal would be to try to preserve as much of that as possible, yet at the same time trying to be as fiscally show as much fiscal restraint as we can so that we can, meet the needs of our district, knowing that we're going to have significantly decreased revenues. But to that end, I think we, as I was mentioning to Danielle and Jennifer, I thought we had, and maybe Mrs. Reardon, if you want to just say a few quick words. I thought we did really well on Saturday morning with our legislative representatives, including Representative Jacobs. It was unfortunate that he didn't hear the beginning part of it, however, because, I do feel like we really laid out our case for where we're at in terms of what has been withheld from us currently and what the costs of the COVID crisis have been for all of our districts. And then, of course, what that 20% cut would look like across the board. So I thought it went really well. I always question in my mind to the extent that it really makes a difference, but I think it went well.
Well, I think too, we were able to, the data that you gathered from all the different school districts to give to our elected officials, it really showed them exactly what that looks like, district by district, what 20% and what that's going to do to their budget. And I don't know how many of you were on the Zoom, I know, but Angela Morinello, our assemblyman, actually asked too that each of the districts, like we were talking about, he was talking specifically about the cuts to pre-K, the PreK funding. And he wanted to know if each of the districts could provide exactly how many kids, how many families are you looking at with that? Because, his point was, you can go back with the numbers, but sometimes you need to go back with the people. Like how is this affecting the families? Like how many families do you have? How many are going to, lose that opportunity? And district by district, that might be a little different too. I know that at a previous meeting, I believe it was Niagara Wheatfield was saying that, pre-K is never anything that they've budgeted for because it's always been that money has always been provided. So it's not like you are just going to, cut something from your budget. That was never a budget line item. So in order to keep it, you would literally have to find that money somewhere else, and no one's going to be finding any money right now. So, to your comment about the congressman, I do think that when he did come in and was talking, I actually felt pretty positive about it. Just when he brought up his experience, serving on the Buffalo Board of Education and then as a state legislator, because he's kind of been on the inside of both of those. And serving at the state level, you can see what the state budget looks like. So, I know he's brand new and up for election come November. So that's one of those, I'm not really sure how much sway he'll be able to have over that. But, as Paul has said, we're kind of being held hostage at the moment. All of our budgets are being leveraged by the state trying to get that federal money. So it's like we're just.
And it's been
completely-
distributed to some counties, but not to Niagara County.
Becky Whitish actually made that point, that she's been getting a lot of calls at the county level when they see programs that are being funded,
In Erie County.
In Erie County, because Erie County got, I want to say it was like, I can't remember the exact number. It was a lot of money through the CARES Act, and Niagara County hasn't gotten any. So to try to, support any of the programs in the county, the money just isn't there.
I think the governor drives around and notices the lawn signs.
I don't think that's it. But, we're just
saying.
kind of in limbo at the moment as far as, where we're going to go. And it just changes, I'd said earlier, day by day, but it really just does change day by day. At first they were saying that we wouldn't get, we just look at the FEMA application, Patty. I mean, you put all of that effort into it, and then we get a note saying that there isn't going to be any money, and we just have to, it's going to be increased operating expenses. Then they backtrack that. So it's just, we just have to kind of stay the course and hope for the best while planning for the worst. But I think on Saturday we made a really good effort, all the school districts in getting that information at least out to our elected officials, like at all levels. So that was good.
Mhm.
It was definitely positive. But once again, you just hope that it's going to get everybody somewhere. One thing it did do, that meeting and all the other meetings that we've had, it's really brought all of the school districts together. I think that, at the beginning of this crisis, especially, the superintendents really came together as a really strong unit. And I think since then, since the budget, all the boards of education, all the school districts at that level have really started to come together when we got that group with the board presidents, and that spilled over into NISBA. And so that in itself has been good. So maybe when, knock on wood, someday this crisis is over, you'll still see that collaboration going forward. We can be hopeful about that. So, but as far as the money, I want to remain optimistic, but it's the new GEA. It's we just don't know what's going to happen.
Well, there's been 2 stimulus packages that have been put on the table by the House with significant dollars earmarked directly to schools. But, obviously it hasn't come to fruition. So the issue we face is the fact that the money could come to New York State, but we may not get it. Or we may get it, but then it will be offset with a significant, quote, pandemic adjustment that will just nullify any sort of monies that would have supported the cost that we've incurred so far.
And that's
So
what we
that's
saw
been
in
the
the
MO.
spring.
That's been the MO of the executive here in our state.
So goal 3 being the budget is a good goal, Paul.
Yeah, probably. I hope I can meet that goal in a positive way.
All right. Any other questions? No. Okay. We were going to talk about the NISBA Convention. I sent out a bunch of information on Friday, so hopefully everybody had a chance to look at it. The one thing that we needed to do was look at the voting delegates discussion. And that just has each one of the proposals. And we gotten in the habit over the past few years of looking at the proposals, and just so that we could guide our voting delegate into how to represent the whole board when voting on those proposals. We are going to need to appoint a voting delegate. So, and as I'd said, that really what you need to do is to be able to be present for the annual meeting and cast the votes. What that looks like in when we were there in person was, the great big giant, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you in different other roles have been at, an annual meeting. So there'd be, they had to have a quorum, which I think was 200 and some, 200, I can't remember, it was 14 or 40 people, all in a big banquet hall. Remember, we can do that. And there was like coffee and things and you get a paddle and everybody would vote and they'd have to go around and count. I'm assuming that that's all going to be virtual, and I don't know how that's going to go. Maybe they'll divide it down. There were points at the meeting when, if it wasn't obvious, that there was more, yays than nays, they'd actually divide it down into sections and somebody would count. So I'm going to guess that maybe they're going to do it virtually that way, so that, because you can't have 200 people on a Zoom and try to figure out who's voting for what. So I really don't know how that's going to look. So was anyone really interested in being the voting delegate? From 8:30 to 10:30 on Halloween morning? Okay, I can't be because I sit on the resolution committee, so I can't be the voting delegate. So we need somebody to be the voting delegate. And I think we had more time, didn't we, Marissa? Do you remember? I don't have it in front of me either, but I want to say I can find it in my email. I didn't make a mental note of it. So
I will do it if nobody else wants to, but I'm not like super like jumping up and down wanting to.
I was going to say we could draw straws.
Usually it was Lance that did it.
Well, Lance did it. Yeah, Lance did it the last, because I think he did it because resolution committee, you can only serve for 2 years. So I did it last year and this year, and I think he stepped up last year, and then I've done it before. So, so Betty, you want to be the voting delegate?
I can do that.
All right. Then what we need to look at really quickly is just the resolutions. And if anyone, and we can go through each one, or if you had a chance to look at them, if you agreed, basically what they'll do is the process for the resolutions coming up is they are actually either developed by NISBA themselves, like by their board of directors, if they had surveys that went out earlier in the year, and if they had just overwhelming, people wanted, showed that they wanted something, then they developed some. But most of them, the majority, come from school districts, and they have an opportunity to ask to craft a resolution and then ask for it to be adopted. And then that will go into, the kind of to set the course for NISBA going forward for that year. So those are what you see. And then those all come to the resolution committee, and they decide whether or not it fits with, kind of with NISBA's charge, and whether or not it's something that they want to take up that year, and usually try to keep it so that it is kind of uniform with other things that are already on the books, and to go forward that way. So the fact that they are picked up to begin with shows that there was support from NISBA and from the resolution committee. And then when you look through, there are some that were submitted that they decided, the resolution committee decided really just didn't fit either within this year or within kind of NISBA's overall charge. So do you want to run through them each one, or is there anything that when you looked through them, that you felt that really didn't kind of follow through with how we see NISBA's role?
I have a question on 13.
Sure.
It's about the
I can't hear you,
immunization.
Jennifer.
Oh, number 13. It's about the immunization records.
Okay.
So are they doing that without parental consent then?
Hold on, I'm getting there. This was actually, if I remember correctly, that the records are already in the system. This had to do, like, if you read the rationale, it had to do with actually the process by which the school nurses, like they were saying, it was a more of a manual function.
Okay.
So that information is already something that has already been provided to the schools and is already in the system. And it was just the technicality so that they could work it. And I'm just trying to get my wording correct if I'm reading through it correctly.
I don't think the school nurses don't utilize that now, do they?
I mean, we supply a form, right?
Right, like parents submit the records, they don't
Yes.
use NISIS.
Correct.
So,
Just to be clear on the resolutions, all this is saying is that NISBA as an organization supports the passing, the support, it's exactly what it's saying there. So it's just supporting that. It's not like if this passes, it's a thing.
Okay,
Yeah,
We're just
Okay.
we're basically just advocating to our legislation that
okay.
that's actually, that's very important distinction. When any of the resolutions, that's just asking NISBA basically to lobby for those. NISBA doesn't craft law or pass law. They can only
Like when
ask.
NISBA lobbies for all that, or passes a resolution that they should support the budget with the money. I wished it was.
Yeah, so what
Yeah.
happens with all of these things, so these are the proposed resolutions, and then when it's all passed, then they publish their legislative priorities for the year, and then that goes to our legislators to say, NISBA as an organization supports these resolutions,
And lobbies, that's what our talking
Right.
points become.
Okay.
Right.
so our school nurses already have access to NISIS.
The way that this,
Sounds like they do.
right. So, but this is,
I didn't think they did. Do they, Patty? I didn't think they did.
So the way that the rationale is stated, it sounds almost like they have access now, right? Am I reading it correctly or wrong?
Our parents supply
The,
immunization records.
Right.
right,
Right.
I'm wondering if that's like a change to the NISIS system, that when you sign off on your kids' records being.
yeah, this
be
is
released
asking
that way.
to authorize bi-directional communication. So I think at this point, maybe it's just one way and they're asking for them to, and I do, if I remembered correctly, it's that next line where it says they must manually download each student's immunization record one at a time from the statewide database, and then one by one re-enter each student's immunization history within the school. If this legislation technicality were fixed, school nurses could transfer students' immunization history directly from the statewide database to the local database. So they're just asking for, they're saying right now it's just a one-way, and they're asking for basically, it looks like more availability to transfer data back and forth rather than having to do it manually. So the question is really data entry, not where the data comes from, or, because it looks like the data is already there. It's
But
just,
the schools already have access to that?
No,
No.
I don't
it
think they
says
do.
no.
okay.
So that, I think that's the heart of your concern, right, is
Well,
can the schools access it without parental consent?
correct.
There, I don't remember anything about parental consent being, I think it's something that it doesn't say that within the rationale. I mean, parents have to supply their records. So I think this was just strictly about the transfer of that.
Okay.
So,
It might just be a technicality on how to do it, so it's more efficiently done.
yeah, it actually says it would reduce the likelihood of clerical errors. I think that the whole issue was the data entry and that they have to do it manually now, when it could just be, they could be submitting records as opposed to manually entering it. So, and those, if the issue was consent, those issues, the parents would have to have supplied those.
Okay.
So. I'm thinking about like those yellow cards. Remember the yellow cards? So think of it like, was your son still here when we had the yellow cards, or were they gone? That we had to fill out all of that that information on like 4 different cards and then send it in, and that had to be manually entered instead of just going right into PowerSchool and entering your information. I think that might be an analogy between the
Okay.
two, where it can be like directly entered rather than filling out the form and then typing it all in.
Okay.
So,
I have a question about number 3.
okay.
Can
Yeah.
you speak to that resolution some, or putting the burden of proof on the families instead of the school district?
Actually, why? Yeah, I was going to say, why don't we just run back really quickly and just make sure that we can run over them quickly, just to give Betty guidance for looking at these. So we'll go to resolution 1, and that'll take us right to, we'll get there really quickly. So sunsetting resolution just means it's already been approved and they've already been working towards it. And then it's just kind of, you know, what's the word I'm looking
Re-up
for?
it.
Thank you.
Re-emphasize?
School Boards Association shall advocate for an overhaul of the current inadequate testing system to more accurately measure achievement and skills, knowledge, abilities, and we'll do this by, and then that list. I think that has definitely been something that NISBA has been working towards, and most of the school districts can agree. So everybody was good with. Okay, resolution 2. Easier for the districts to recover attorney fees in legal cases related to special education where the district is the prevailing party. And this really goes to, there was actually a series of resolutions talking about special ed cases and about kind of some of the ways that attorneys in particular have really tied up the system without really working necessarily for the best interest of the students or the schools. So did anyone have any questions on that, or is that something that anyone felt that we shouldn't pick up? Okay. Number 3. Shall support legislation that would shift the burden of proof in special education due process complaints away from the district and back to the party seeking relief. And you had a question about that?
Well, just
Beyond what it,
yeah, like, have they talked about it in the resolutions committee? I'm just wondering, is it that it looks from the rationale that it's a big issue?
this had come up, I believe, last year as well. And really, if you read through the rationale about it, it really was pretty straightforward. It was to, as it said, to shift that burden back to the parties seeking relief. So reading through the rationale, I think that might give you a little bit more insight on it. And a lot, as I said, a lot of these that were coming from, there were several school districts in particular. It was really just picking up the system and more kind of trying to help school districts to work within the law and to have also the attorneys, and later on you'll see like some advocates to work within the system and not to abuse the system and tie up resources. That seems to be an issue in a lot of school districts. And anything that having to do with any of that legislation would have to completely fit within IDEA and within, you know, with state and federal laws. So is it something that you felt that you didn't want to support, or that you just wanted some clarification? I don't know that we've had that issue here, but you will see later on that that is an issue in some of our neighboring, actually one of our neighboring districts did bring that up. And they brought it up last year, and it actually went back and forth several times, just trying to get the wording kind of to a point that NISBA could pick it up. And really that was about, and we'll get to that later, but it was trying to make sure that you have the correct wording and tone between parent advocates, which you can advocate for your child, but then there's also people that that do it professionally that really don't have credentials,
Right.
and that sometimes really work more just to upset the process than to actually find resolution and kind of tie up the districts in litigation. And that's part of what I believe was with the attorneys that they're talking about in these as well.
2 years ago, I attended the law conference, the pre-seminar law conference, and it was a big subject there. And what Jody is speaking of is that districts have just become almost by default just giving into any special education demands because these attorneys just make it incredibly expensive to fight anything. So, you know, there's been a big conversation more recently about the fact that we have to start pushing back and giving kids appropriate services, but we can't just give everything just because we're afraid of litigation. Sometimes we have to draw that line in the sand. And that's kind of what this is.
That was in one of the rationales, I think.
Yeah. And I think that it goes to more egregious, like abuse of the legal system. And that each one of these that were brought up by these districts, they wanted to make sure that it was worded in a way that would protect parental rights, with just trying to kind of restrain's not the word, but trying to, you know, kind of draw some best practices for where attorneys, because things can sometimes get really out of hand. And I believe that was the purpose. So did you feel good going forward with the way that this was written?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Patty, you'll probably like this one, which was to help seek legislation or policy changes that would mandate local industrial development agencies to include affected school districts in the development of any pilot agreements. I don't think anybody would have a problem with that. Just for a little background, I mean, they could, IDAs don't necessarily have to work with school districts, yet they tell us what we're going to get. As you know, we are a taxing agency entity, excuse me, but we're not necessarily, we don't always have a seat at the table when they make up deals. Resolution 6, School Board Association supports proposals to expand opportunities and capacity for online learning. Right on time. I believe that they said that this, this had been submitted or had already been in the working stages before the pandemic, but here we are. So I think we can support that. Resolution 7, School Board Association support proposals to incorporate pre-kindergarten funding into school aid formula K through 12. There was actually quite a bit of discussion around this for the idea that it would, if NISBA is going to work towards lobbying for this, that it would be something in addition to the current funding formula, not just in place of something else. So
I would worry about that actually, because if it was in the formula versus how it is now, where everyone's getting pre-K funding,
right,
we'd end up having to pay for a big portion of our pre-K because we get less in our foundation aid then.
So, and I know that went into the rationale that they want that to be a separate and distinct pre-K funding. And to actually expand it to be actual universal pre-K funding, you know, and not the limits that are placed on it now. Let's see, Resolution 8, oppose proposals to raise the number of charter schools authorized by the state. This was really, you can see when it's submitted by the School Boards Association, those came out of that survey. And I think there's actually a series of surveys, and you're going to find that that's a lot of those are your big 5 school districts, and a lot of we don't have charter schools, really don't affect us. this particular proposal, but I think it would be good to approve, to vote for it because it does impact a lot of our, fellow school districts.
The other thing is with COVID and homes and children being home, parents may be looking for alternatives and may look at developing a charter school in the area
It's true.
as another alternative.
I mean, we have seen that here, and parents who, made the decision to enroll in, some of the private and parochial schools in our, within our school district.
But they might look to start it.
Right, because they can offer 5-day a week as, where we can't. So I know that that's been,
that door.
okay. So I think we should support them supporting us. Number 9, should oppose proposals to expand mayoral control to school districts beyond New York City. This is a big issue for Buffalo School District. So I have no problem supporting this. I don't know how you guys feel about it. Resolution 10, NISBA supports proposals to regulate and restrict the use of tobacco products among youth. Anyone want kids smoking? Anyone good? And there's always an issue when these come up, both the tobacco ones and the vaping ones. There were a couple of vaping ones that were picked up last year. And there are several people on the resolution committee that always push back on these, not because they think people should be smoking, but just because they don't feel it's in the purveyance of NISBA to tell people that they shouldn't be smoking. Or there's even ones like, should a store be advertising or selling them within, so far among schools, and that comes up each time. So, a little bit more than just, we don't want them doing it. It's do they have the, do they have the purveyance to be telling the state how they can regulate businesses? So that's just, I think we can all agree that we don't want kids smoking. But, so we're good with that. Number 11, we're running right through these. Support to allow more than one board member to simultaneously attend a New York State Office of State Comptroller audit exit conference. And this was actually brought by our BOCES. So, and it was brought up that that NISBA will support it. And if you read the rationale, I mean, there's just one person, one board member that's allowed at those audits, and they're just asking to have 2. And the reason really was just to have 2 sets of eyes and ears so that they could come back to the board and explain it. So I don't know if anyone has an issue with that. And once again, I don't know how much leverage NISBA will have with the state controller's office. But Patty, the more the merrier in an audit. All right. Supports legislation to make it clear that public school districts are not responsible for assessing the substantial equivalency of education delivered in non-public schools. Resolution 12. How do you feel about that? The state law basically puts us private or public schools in a place of having to review and kind of make sure that the non-pubs are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And they're saying that we shouldn't be in that position, that the state should be in that position. With everything else that we have to do, I think that was a big part of it. Number 13, we went over. Number 14, enable the Commissioner of Education to declare an alternative election arrangement in cases where a disaster substantially interrupts scheduled school board budget and budget votes. This was actually outside of what happened with the election here. And this was really talking about more like actual natural disasters. You could have a school district that had their, it's election day and there's a huge freak storm and there's no power. So it was really trying to, when you look at what happened with the election this year, that was a series of executive orders. This would actually make it so that the Commissioner of Education could do this, and only really in the event of an actual, no kidding, emergency just for that day. or, you know, that period of time, because who knows, tornadoes or something. So everybody cool with that? Number 15, support legislation that would provide for training and certification for professional parent advocates to attend committee on special education meetings and hearings. And once again, this was brought up by Wilson. Last year it went back and forth and wasn't able to be worded to the point that it would be brought up to as a resolution. And really the rationale speaks to what that was about. And it was looking for training and certification of professional parent advocates, people that are actually out there, you know, charging for their services, but there really at this point isn't, there's really no licensing, and there's really no best practices set up, so that if somebody is kind of acting outside of what would be considered professional behavior, there's no remedy for that. Well, at least with attorneys, there are remedies. If someone is really acting unprofessionally, you know, they can seek help from, like, say, the Bar Association or someone else. This was really looking to do that, and I don't know where this will go, but it is asking that they can at least look into that at the state level, as let that know that that's a concern for a lot of school districts, and see where they can go about trying to look for perhaps some licensing or something to help at this point. So
Do we know where the licensing would come from? Would the district
It would-
be responsible for that?
they're looking for that to be developed at the state level. So they're asking, Wilson is asking for NISBA to some help from them, thinking that this isn't just an issue that they're facing, even though they have been facing this for a couple of years, but looking for that guidance from the state. So for the state to kind of weigh in on how to protect parental rights, but at the same time, to maybe put a little bit of guidance on people who are paraprofessionals.
My concern is that it would be an unfunded mandate back to the district.
No, this was not on the district. It's not on the
And this would
district
only
to
be for
provide.
Professional parent advocates, like if
Yes.
I was like the advocate for my niece, for instance, that wouldn't necessarily apply to me because I have a relationship with the family necessary, you know what I mean?
Yes,
This is for someone who's
And-
calling themselves a professional for hire advocate.
that was actually part of the reason that this wasn't picked up last year, because the language in it really didn't speak to that, or
Would they
not
allow-
clearly enough.
Would they allow, I mean, in the district I taught in, they allowed parental advocates to come in.
Yes,
For-
absolutely.
They
You have
allowed them.
You have
But if you then say we're training professionals, would that then limit a non-professional from coming?
That was a big part of the
And who
discussion.
would pay the professional?
People are paying them now. So that was part of the issue with this at all, was the fact that that there has to be a clear line of delineation between your right as a parent to be at the special education meetings and hearings, and to appoint someone, like say I'm going to ask Danielle to do it for me, because I know that Danielle has a lot of experience, and I'm going to ask her to come along with me, and she's going to help guide me through this. But I could also hire somebody, and that's where Wilson and some other school districts are really having
So it's with
issues.
the professionals that they're
It's with
having.
the professionals. It's with the professionals. And when you said that, though, about the unfunded mandates, that's a lot of the reason that in the work of the resolution committee that things aren't picked up as well. Like that comes up, you know, I'd mentioned the purveyance of NISBA, but also anything that could come up is that it would basically put extra costs, because sometimes people, you know, school districts do bring that up, that you'll see some of the ones that weren't picked up, like they want, you know, training, you know, beyond the fiscal training. And that has come up as we can't mandate that, because who's going to pay for this and who's going to develop it? And there's also, if you're asking NISBA to develop it, can it just be, you know, something that's, you know, open, that you can do it if you want to, but to mandate anything is usually something that gets pushed back.
And like to
Charlotte's point, doesn't the district provide a list of parent advocates?
They do. This was more talking about this to support legislation that would have them have to have some kind of training or certification through SED.
The parental advocates also?
No, this is
Just the
just, this strictly is for professionals.
So
So
that would be a separate thing than the parent advocates that we
Yes.
provide our special.
I think this is-
education families with.
this was
Correct.
specifically
These are
for,
parents who go out and hire an advocate.
Rather than rather than relying on the parental advocates that you.
Correct.
correct. And I think it's really come up through through kind of some abuses in the system.
So if I could just make a suggestion, I
Yeah.
did not realize that you were going to go over each of the,
Okay. Are they going to be here at 7?
they're here already.
Oh,
They
okay.
were,
All right.
I told them 6:45, looking at the agenda.
Okay, I thought we were at 7, so that's why I
I
thought we were good.
apologize. So I didn't realize that. There is still time to, we
That's
have,
fine.
you're up to resolution
Did everyone had a chance to
18, I
read
believe,
them?
17?
Did anyone have
15.
any with the
There's only
ones,
3 more, right? The rest
That's
of them
okay.
are not recommended.
the rest of them were not
Oh, I'm sorry.
recommended?
Okay, yeah, then wrap it up. Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm
Let's-
sorry
let's-
about, I thought we had till 7, so I
No,
thought we were good to
No, it was
go through
6:45.
it.
Yeah, I'm
You know
sorry. I
what,
don't
did
mean to
any-
interrupt.
No, that's fine. Did anyone have any other,
You're on the clock, though.
to go over it? And I'm sorry, that's how we had done it in the past couple of years. So when we started getting this one and that one and the other, I thought it would probably be best just to run through them really quick. Well, if no one had any other issues and we feel comfortable in advising our delegate to support them, then also during the process, people can make other districts, they can make amendments and it can go back and forth. So it's really helpful when you are voting on it to have that background as to what your board wants you to do, because sometimes they can change, on the floor. So the only other thing to discuss really quick, and we can also have an opportunity to do it at the next meeting, was really just, and we'll leave it at that since we're going to move on to the next portion of the meeting. But before the next one, just take a look at the educational section and just decide how we want to approach it, because you can do them in real time, but they're also going to be recorded and posted. So I was
Well,
going to,
we really won't have time because the next meeting is the end of October and that's
the next meetings,
The 26th and then it starts on the
22nd. Yeah.
it does, okay, all right.
So we will not have a meeting between now and the start of the convention.
Okay. That's true, it extended, apologize.
Mhm.
But everybody is registered for it, so they could really do what.
Well, there was a question was whether we wanted to gather here, anybody that was interested and when there are real-time,
Yeah, those start on the 27th, which is the next day.
Well, we can talk about them when we come out of executive session.
We could do that. My point was just going to be if we wanted to gather to try to do
the
them.
real-time start on the 27th or the 22nd?
27th.
Oh, all right, then we do have time to talk about it. Sorry.
Because if you look, the Tuesday, Wednesday, that's your pre-convention stuff, because it's spread out those days. I'm looking at the schedule.
Yeah, sorry. Never mind.
And that's okay. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah, the keynote is the 27th.
I was going to propose as well that we take a look at, because they're listed by kind of by strand. So you might have, things that have to do with, board governance and things that have to do with rural schools and things that have to. So if we can work that, you can actually get together and watch them live, and they're also recorded. So and they're going to be posted for quite some time. So we might be able to, decide on who wants to do what, and then kind of like what we were even doing with the book study where we, talked, we could take our work sessions in November and December and really dive into some of those, maybe work together and say, if you want to take 3 sessions or 4 sessions, I want to take 3 sessions or 4 sessions. And then even like pandemic actually spread out across, there was one on finances during the pandemic and one on mental health during the pandemic. And so maybe if we look at it that way and divide them up, we can decide how we want to do that. And then if we want to get together, maybe we can talk about that real quick, like Betty said at the end.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, to watch the keynote, people would have to gather here at 8:30 in the morning on that day, and we could watch the keynote. The educational sessions then are So it would really be a matter of whether people want to do that and attend them together here. I mean, certainly we could watch the keynote here together and but I don't know what people's availability are during the day, you know.
All right, let's mull that over. And at this point, I am going to move to enter into executive session to convene to seek legal advice from our attorney, which is privileged by law. If I may have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Okay, we're in executive session.
She raised her hand.
She is no longer with us,
Okay.
Okay.
and I'm ending the meeting then because we're going into executive session and in anticipation of.
We will take no action following executive session, so we can adjourn after executive session.